Do you hear it? The echoes of the past, the whispers of forgotten truths, fragments of memories lost in the shadows. Welcome to BRAINROT, Echoes, where we bring you stories long buried, unravel mysteries cloaked by time, and guide you through the darkest corners of the mind and the universe. Each video is more than just content. It's an echo resonating deep within, urging you to question, to wonder, to explore. Backend index pointing right, hit subscribe, turn on the notification bell, and join us in listening to the
Doctor
echoes the world
and the Bacterial
try to
War.
silence. Command, this is Recon Unit 9. We have a problem. The voice crackled through the comm system, carrying the kind of tension that usually preceded very bad news. Fleet Admiral Zyler of the Draka Confederacy paused mid-stride through the bridge of his flagship. His four forearms instinctively reached for the nearest stable surface. In his 200 cycles of military service, he'd learned that when scouts used the word problem, it was time to start drafting evacuation orders. Define problem, 9, Zyler replied, his voice carrying the weary patience of someone who'd been through this dance before. Yes, sir, we've located the human medical facility as ordered. It's a standard field hospital, maybe 30 beds, nothing fancy. But there's a human outside, just one, and he's holding a medkit. The bridge fell silent, except for the gentle hum of life support systems. Zyler felt his primary heart skip a beat, while his secondary heart picked up the slack, an evolutionary trait that had served his species well during moments of pure, unadulterated terror. Repeat that, 9. One human, sir. Standard military fatigues. Medium build, dark hair, looks maybe 30 standard years old. He's just standing there holding a medical kit. The green and white kind with the snake and staff symbol. Zyler closed all four of his eyes and let out a long, slow breath. 9. I need you to listen very carefully. Do not, and I cannot stress this enough, do not engage. Do not approach. Do not even look at him. Fall back to minimum safe distance and hold position. I'm calling high command. Now, you might be wondering why a fleet admiral with enough firepower to glass a small moon would be intimidated by one human holding what amounted to a fancy first aid kit. Well, buckle up because this is where things get interesting. You see, the thing about humans is that they have this absolutely fascinating relationship with their medical personnel. Most civilized species treat their healers with respect. They're valuable, they're protected, and they're generally kept far away from anything that might shoot back. It's just common sense, really. Humans, however, decided that common sense was more of a suggestion than a rule. Dr. Kalen Vance stood in the dusty courtyard of Field Hospital Gamma 9, medkit in hand, and wondered how exactly his life had led him to this moment. He joined the Terran Colonial Medical Corps with dreams of bringing healing to the frontier worlds, maybe writing a few papers on xenobiology, perhaps even discovering a new antibiotic or two. Instead, he was apparently about to become a war crime. Doc, you might want to get back inside, called Sergeant Rixel, a tall Draco with deep blue skin, from the hospital's main entrance. Sensors are picking up movement in the hills. Looks like our red friends are back. Kalen adjusted his grip on the medkit and shook his head. Still got 2 wounded out there, Rixel. The evac shuttle won't be back for another hour, and Private Tharn isn't going to make it that long without proper treatment. Private Tharn is already stable. Document. You patched him up good. Stable isn't the same as safe. Kalen checked his watch. Besides, what's the worst that could happen? They're just here for intelligence gathering. It's not like they're going to. That's when the shooting started. The worst part about being a medic in the Terran military, Kalen had discovered, wasn't the blood or the screaming or even the occasional alien parasite trying to burrow through your ear canal. No, the worst part was the way everyone else reacted when things went sideways. Normal people, sensible people, when faced with incoming weapons fire, tend to duck, cover, and generally try to put as much solid matter between themselves and the things that go bang. It's a reasonable response, really. Very logical. Medical personnel, however, had apparently missed that particular day in Common Sense 101. Kalen sprinted across the open courtyard toward the perimeter fence, medkit bouncing against his hip, while energy bolts sizzled past his head. In the distance, he could see the heat signature of KRYLL soldiers, tall, crimson, and currently very confused about why this particular human was running toward them instead of away. "Tharn!" Kalen shouted as he reached the young soldier who'd been caught in the open during the attack. "How we doing, buddy?" Private Tharn, all of 19 years old and currently sporting a rather impressive hole in his left shoulder, looked up with the kind of expression usually reserved for people who just watched their favorite sports team lose by a single point. "Been better, Doc," Tharn managed through gritted teeth. "Maybe been worse, too, but I can't remember when." "Well, let's see what we can do about that," Kalen said, dropping to his knees beside the private and opening his medkit. Around them, the firefight continued with the sort of enthusiastic violence that made military procurement officers very happy and insurance actuaries very sad. From his position in the hills, KRYLL Recon Unit 9 watched through high-powered scopes as the human medic worked on his patient. The alien soldiers had stopped shooting, partly because they were professional enough to recognize a non-combatant, but mostly because they'd been specifically briefed about this exact scenario. "Command, the human is now treating wounded personnel in an active combat zone," 9 reported. He's completely ignoring the weapon's fire." "Of course he is," came the weary reply from Admiral Zeiler. "That's what they do." 9, I need you to pull back your units immediately." "Sir, we have tactical superiority. One human medic doesn't change. One human medic changes everything. Haven't you read the tactical briefs, the incident reports, the psychological evaluations?" 9 paused. "I may have skimmed them, sir." "Well, allow me to summarize. When a human medic decides someone needs medical attention, nothing, and I mean nothing, will stop them from providing it. Not walls, not weapons, not physics, not common sense, and certainly not enemy fire. They will walk through a plasma bombardment if they think someone on the other side needs a Band-Aid. But, sir, that's impossible. No species would." 9. 2 cycles ago, a human medic named Dr. Velda Martinez walked into a Drakenhive ship. A hive ship, 9, armed with nothing but a medkit and a strongly worded letter from the Galactic Medical Association. The Drakens had taken prisoners, and Martinez wanted to check on their health. She spent 6 hours in there, treated 11 different species for various ailments. And when she came out, she handed the Hive Queen a prescription for her chronic joint pain. What happened to the prisoners? The Drakens let them go. They also hired Martinez as their ship's physician. Apparently, she's very good with arthritis. Back on the battlefield, Kalen had successfully stabilized Tharn and was now faced with a tactical decision. The smart play would be to drag the private back to the hospital, call it a day, and let the Marines handle the shooty bits. It was the sensible thing to do. Unfortunately, Kalen had spotted movement in the rocks about 50 meters away. Movement that looked suspiciously like someone else who might need medical attention. "Tharn, can you make it back to the hospital on your own?" Kalen asked, helping the private to his feet. "Yeah, document." "I think so." "What?" Kalen was already reaching for his medkit. "Because I think there's someone else out there who needs help." Tharn followed Kalen's gaze toward the enemy position, and his face went pale. "Doc, you're not thinking of the Hippocratic Oath doesn't have a species clause." "Doc, the what now?" "Never mind. Get back to the hospital. That's an order." The thing about humans, as any xenobiologist will tell you, is that they're not particularly impressive from a purely physical standpoint. They're not the strongest, fastest, or most durable species in the galaxy. They don't have natural armor, claws, or the ability to photosynthesize. By all rights, they should have been relegated to the cosmic equivalent of the kids' table eons ago. But humans have one trait that sets them apart from every other species in the known galaxy. They are absolutely, completely, and utterly incapable of minding their own business when someone needs help. This might seem like a minor personality quirk, but when you combine it with their legendary stubbornness, their complete disregard for self-preservation, and their unsettling ability to weaponize anything they can get their hands on, it becomes something approaching a superpower. And medics, well, medics are the apex predators of human helpfulness. Kalen made it about halfway to the KRYL position before the shooting stopped entirely. This was either a very good sign or a very bad sign, and given his track record, he was betting on the latter. "Human," came a voice from behind the rocks. "Human medic, we need to talk." Kalen paused, medkit still in hand. "Are you injured?" "No." "Well, maybe. That is not the point. You need to stop." "Stop what?" "Stop. Stop being a medic." Kalen blinked. "I'm sorry." "What?" A tall red figure emerged from behind the rocks, weapon lowered, but still held in two of his four hands. The KRYL looked nervous, which was impressive considering his species typically showed emotion by changing the color of their skin. This one was currently a shade of deep crimson that Kalen's medical training suggested meant either deeply concerned or about to explode. "You are Dr. Kalen Vance?" the alien asked. How do you never mind?" "Yes, I'm Dr. Vance." "Are you hurt?" "No." "And please stop asking that." "But you said you needed to talk." "And usually when people need to talk to a medic, it's because—" No. The KRYL held up all four hands in a gesture of surrender. "I am Squad Leader Zalter of the KRYL Confederacy. I am here to formally request that you cease your medical activities." Kalen tilted his head. "I'm sorry. You want me to stop being a doctor in this combat zone?" "Yes. Please, we will even pay you." That's not how this works." What followed was perhaps the most surreal conversation in the history of interstellar warfare. On one side, you had Squad Leader Zalter, a professional soldier with over 50 years of combat experience, trying to explain why his entire unit was terrified of one human with a first aid kit. On the other side, you had Dr. Kalen Vance, who was genuinely confused about why anyone would have a problem with basic medical care. "You see," Zalter explained, his skin shifting to a lighter red that indicated either embarrassment or indigestion. "We have standing orders regarding human medical personnel in combat zones." "What kind of orders?" "To avoid them at all costs. To disengage immediately if encountered. To file a formal incident report if we so much as see one." Kalen adjusted his grip on the medkit. "That seems extreme." "Dr. Vance, are you familiar with the Battle of Kepler 773c? Should I be?" "A human medic named Dr. Eva Rostova. Single field hospital, treating wounded from both sides of the conflict. When our forces attempted to secure the facility, she convinced our commanding officer to donate blood." "Well, he was not wounded. She said his iron levels were low." Kalen opened his mouth to respond, then closed it again. "Oh, the commanding officer is now a vegetarian. He has also taken up meditation. He sends Dr. Rostova holiday cards." "I'm starting to see the problem." "That is not the problem, Dr. Vance. The problem is what happened when the Draken forces tried to shell the hospital." "What happened?" "She walked out to meet them with her medkit. She convinced them to stop shooting because the explosions were bad for her patient's recovery." "That's actually pretty reasonable." "Dr. Vance, they were in orbit. She somehow convinced them to come down for a house call." The conversation continued for another 20 minutes, during which Kalen learned about the Terran Medical Corps' growing reputation as the galaxy's most politely aggressive force. There was Dr. Chun, who had ended a 3-year siege by treating the commanding officers on both sides for stress-related ulcers. There was Dr. Singh, who had convinced an entire pirate fleet to switch to a high-fiber diet after diagnosing their captain with chronic constipation. And there was Dr. Ito, who had somehow managed to perform surgery on a Zyro's queen while she was still in combat, thereby earning the eternal gratitude of a species that communicates primarily through interpretive dance. "The point is," Zalter concluded, "human medics are persuasive." "We prefer dedicated," Kalen replied. "Dr. Vance, the last time my unit encountered a human medic, 3 of my soldiers ended up enrolling in nursing school." "That's actually kind of sweet." "They were career military, 20-year veterans. One of them was up for promotion too." Zalter stopped himself and took a deep breath. "The point is, we would very much like to complete our mission without any more of my soldiers discovering they have a calling in the healing arts." Kalen considered this. "What exactly is your mission?" "Intelligence gathering. We need to assess the defensive capabilities of this facility." Oh, that's easy. We've got about 30 beds, basic surgical equipment, and a really good coffee maker that Sergeant Rixel liberated from a supply depot. Our most dangerous weapon is probably the autoclave, and that's only dangerous if you don't know how to use it properly. Zalter blinked. You were just going to tell me. Why wouldn't I? You're not here to attack the hospital, are you? Well, no, but then what's the problem? We're a medical facility. We don't have any strategic value beyond treating wounded people, which, by the way, we do for anyone who needs it. No questions asked. Anyone. That's kind of the point. This was the moment when squad leader Zalter realized he was in serious trouble. Not because of enemy fire or tactical disadvantages, but because the human medic was looking at him with the kind of expression usually reserved for people who just discovered a lost puppy in a rainstorm. You know, Kalen said thoughtfully, you look a little pale. Well, paler than usual for a red person. Are you feeling all right, Dr. Vance? Zalter, please do not. When was the last time you had a full physical? Do KRYLL need regular checkups? I'm not familiar with your species' medical requirements, but I'd be happy to look them up. Zalter's skin shifted to a deep crimson that indicated pure, unadulterated panic. Dr. Vance, I am ordering you to stop being concerned about my health. That's not really how concern works. It is an order from a foreign military officer to a civilian medical professional. I don't think that's legally binding. Dr. Vance, call me Kalen. And seriously, you don't look well. Are you getting enough sleep? Proper nutrition? When was your last blood work done? What happened next would later be recorded in military history as the incident at Field Hospital Gamma 9, though the official reports would significantly understate the actual weirdness of the situation. According to the files, squad leader Zalter of the KRYLL Confederacy voluntarily surrendered to Terran forces after a brief negotiation with medical personnel. The reality was somewhat more complex. Dr. Vance, Zalter said with the weary patience of someone who'd been arguing with a particularly stubborn piece of medical equipment, I cannot surrender to you. You are a medic. You are non-combatant personnel. Then don't surrender to me, Kalen replied reasonably. Just come with me to the hospital so I can run some tests. That skin color change is really concerning me. My skin color is normal. For someone who's stressed and possibly hypertensive, maybe, but I'd like to rule out any underlying conditions. I do not have underlying conditions. That's what everyone says right up until they do. Come on, it'll just take a few minutes. I got a portable scanner that can do basic diagnostics. I am not going to your hospital. Fine, I'll bring the scanner here. Though I should mention the lighting isn't great for a proper examination. The standoff continued for another hour, during which Kalen somehow managed to convince Zalter to sit down, drink some water, and answer a series of questions about his medical history that the KRYLL squad leader swore were definitely not part of a routine physical examination. By the time backup arrived, both Terra Marines and additional KRYLL forces, they found the two of them sitting in the shade of a large rock with Kalen, taking notes on a datapad, while Zalter reluctantly described his symptoms. You see, Kalen was saying, that pain in your lower back, that's probably just muscle tension from carrying heavy equipment, but it could also indicate kidney issues. When was your last urinalysis? I'm not discussing my urinalysis with an enemy medic. Enemy? I thought we were friends now. We are not friends, but you told me about your childhood digestive issues. That's definitely friend-level information. You said it was relevant to my current symptoms. It is. Everything's connected. That's the beauty of medicine. You can't treat one part of the body without considering the whole system. The arriving forces found themselves in the awkward position of trying to figure out how to handle a situation that wasn't quite a surrender, wasn't quite a medical emergency, and definitely wasn't covered in any of their training manuals. So, said Marine Captain Torres, looking from Kalen to Zalter and back again. What exactly is happening here? Dr. Vance has taken me prisoner, Zalter said miserably. I haven't taken anyone prisoner, Kalen protested. I've just been providing medical advice. He will not let me leave until I agree to a full physical examination. That's not true. You can leave whenever you want. I just think it would be medically inadvisable. See, Zalter gestured with all four arms. He is holding me hostage with his medical opinions. Captain Torres rubbed her temples. Doc, please tell me you haven't been interrogating a prisoner. He's not a prisoner. He's a potential patient. And it wasn't an interrogation. It was a medical history. What did you learn? Well, he's been having some digestive issues that could be related to stress. His sleep schedule is completely irregular, and he hasn't had a proper physical in over 3 years. Also, I think he might be developing an ulcer. An ulcer? Classic symptoms: stomach pain, irregular eating, high-stress job. I've recommended dietary changes and suggested he consider meditation or other stress reduction techniques. Zalter's skin shifted to a resigned shade of crimson. He also wants me to cut back on stimulants and increase my intake of leafy vegetables because it's good for you to... I did not eat leafy vegetables. That's probably part of the problem. The situation was eventually resolved through a combination of diplomatic intervention and medical consultation. Zalter was allowed to return to his unit, but only after agreeing to schedule a proper physical examination with a KRYLL military physician. Kalen provided a detailed list of recommended tests and dietary suggestions, which Zalter accepted with the same enthusiasm most people reserve for tax audits. The intelligence-gathering mission was considered a success, though the KRYLL's final report noted that the Terran medical facility posed minimal tactical threat, but significant risk of unsolicited health advice. 3 weeks later, Kalen received a message from Zalter reporting that his digestive issues had improved significantly since implementing the recommended dietary changes. The message also included a formal request for recipes that incorporated more leafy vegetables, along with a complaint that his unit's morale had improved to annoyingly optimistic levels since he'd started the meditation exercises. The incident at Field Hospital Gamma 9 became something of a legend in military circles, though the details varied, depending on who was telling the story. Some versions had Kalen single-handedly defeating an entire KRYLL battalion through aggressive preventive care. Others claimed he'd convinced the enemy forces to surrender by threatening them with mandatory annual checkups. The truth, as it often does, fell somewhere in between. So, Sergeant Rixel said as she found Kalen in the hospital supply room updating inventory logs. I hear you've been terrorizing the enemy with medical advice. I haven't been terrorizing anyone, Kalen replied, making a note about their dwindling supply of antiseptic. I was just being thorough enough to convince a squad leader to voluntarily discuss his bathroom habits with a complete stranger. Medical history is important. You can't properly treat someone without understanding their full health picture. Kalen, he wasn't your patient. He was an enemy soldier conducting surveillance. He was a person who needed medical attention. The enemy soldier part was just his day job. Rixel shook her head. You realize Command is probably going to want to debrief you about this, right? They're calling it a new form of nonviolent conflict resolution. It's not nonviolent conflict resolution. It's just medicine. You convinced an enemy unit to withdraw from the field by making them worry about their health. That's either brilliant psychological warfare or the most aggressively helpful thing I've ever seen. Can it be both? The real impact of the incident became clear 2 months later when the KRYLL Confederacy issued new tactical guidelines for encounters with Terran medical personnel. The document, which was later leaked to the Galactic press, included the following recommendations. Avoid direct contact with human medical personnel unless absolutely necessary. Do not make eye contact with humans carrying medical equipment. If approached by a human medic, immediately report any symptoms of illness or injury. Under no circumstances should personnel admit to having just a small headache or feeling a little tired. Emergency extraction protocols should be implemented if a human medic begins asking about family medical history. All personnel should ensure their medical records are up to date before deployment to avoid embarrassing questions during potential examinations. The guidelines were met with widespread ridicule from other species until similar incidents began occurring across the galaxy. The Regellian Navy reported that their entire Third Fleet had been convinced to participate in a smoking cessation program after an encounter with a human medic who was concerned about their respiratory health. The Centauri Trade Federation noted that their merchant vessels had begun carrying emergency medical supplies after a human doctor had pointed out that their crews were showing signs of vitamin deficiency. Within a year, the Galactic Medical Association had to create a new classification system for what they termed aggressive preventive care incidents. The human medical community, meanwhile, remained baffled by the fuss. "We're just doing our jobs," Dr. Vance explained to a reporter from the Galactic Health Network. "If someone needs medical attention, we provide it. That's what we do." But don't you think it's unusual to treat enemy soldiers? Enemy soldiers are still people. People get sick. People get injured. People need medical care. The politics of the situation don't change the biology. What about the tactical advantages? Some military analysts suggest that your methods could be used as a form of psychological warfare. Kalen looked genuinely confused. Psychological warfare? We're just trying to keep people healthy. But you've effectively neutralized enemy forces through medical intervention. We've helped people identify and address health issues that were affecting their quality of life. If that happens to make them less inclined to shoot at people, well, that's just a nice side effect. The truth was, Kalen had never intended to become a tactical asset. He just wanted to help people regardless of which side of the conflict they happened to be on. The fact that this approach had proved surprisingly effective at de-escalating military situations was something that still puzzled him. I mean, it makes sense when you think about it, he explained to Captain Torres during one of their regular coffee meetings. Most conflicts are driven by fear, anger, and stress. Those are all things that can be addressed through proper medical care and lifestyle changes. You're saying wars are caused by poor health? I'm saying poor health doesn't help. When people are tired, stressed, and in pain, they're more likely to make bad decisions. Address the underlying health issues, and suddenly people are more willing to talk things through. So, your solution to interstellar conflict is better health care, among other things? Yes. You'd be surprised how many problems can be solved with proper nutrition, adequate sleep, and regular exercise. Torres stared at him. You're serious. Completely. Look at Zolter. Once we addressed his digestive issues and got him on a better sleep schedule, he became much more reasonable. He's actually been sending me progress reports. Progress reports? His ulcer symptoms have completely resolved, and his stress levels are way down. He's even started a meditation group for his unit. A meditation group. Stress reduction is important for military personnel. High-stress environments can lead to all sorts of health problems if not properly managed. Torres rubbed her temples. Kalen, do you realize you've essentially weaponized wellness? I've provided medical care to people who needed it. The fact that healthier people tend to be more rational and less aggressive isn't my fault. It's just biology. The conversation was interrupted by an urgent message from command. Long-range sensors had detected a massive KRYLL fleet approaching the system, and all medical facilities were being ordered to prepare for potential casualties. Looks like we might be getting busy, Torres said, checking her sidearm. Kalen was already reaching for his medkit. I should start prepping the surgical bay. Kalen, if this turns into a full-scale engagement, I need you to promise me you'll stay in the hospital. No running out to treat wounded soldiers in the middle of a firefight. I can't promise that. Kalen, Rixel, if people are hurt, I'm going to help them. That's what I do. That's what I'm afraid of. The KRYLL fleet arrived 6 hours later, but instead of the expected orbital bombardment, they transmitted a single message: request permission to dock for medical consultation. The message was signed by Fleet Admiral Zeiler, who had apparently been suffering from chronic back pain for the past several years. He'd heard about Dr. Vance's success in treating similar conditions and was hoping to schedule an appointment. You see, Kalen said to Torres as they watched the first shuttle load of KRYLL officers disembark at the hospital's landing pad. Most problems really can be solved with proper medical care. This is insane, Torres muttered. We're about to provide enemy forces with comprehensive physical examinations. They're not enemy forces. They're patients. And technically, we're not at war with the KRYLL Confederacy anymore. Since when? Since Admiral Zeiler signed the non-aggression pact about 20 minutes ago. Apparently, he's been looking for an excuse to end hostilities. The back pain was just the last straw. Torres stared at him. You ended a war with physical therapy? I haven't done anything yet. But chronic pain can really affect someone's quality of life. It's no wonder he was making aggressive military decisions. He was probably in discomfort constantly. So, you're saying his bad back made him invade 3-star systems? I'm saying chronic pain can affect judgment and decision-making. Address the pain, and suddenly people are more inclined to consider diplomatic solutions. The next few days were some of the busiest in field Hospital Gamma 9's history. What started as a single medical consultation turned into a comprehensive health assessment for the entire KRYLL command structure. Kalen found himself treating everything from stress-related digestive issues to vitamin deficiencies to chronic fatigue syndrome. You know, Admiral Zeiler said as Kalen worked on his lower back, "I cannot remember the last time I felt this good." That's what happens when you address the underlying causes instead of just treating the symptoms, Kalen replied, adjusting the heat therapy unit. Your posture has improved significantly since we started the exercises. My staff has noticed. They say I seem more approachable. Chronic pain can make anyone irritable. You've probably been dealing with low-level discomfort for so long that you forgot what it felt like to be pain-free. Perhaps. I must admit the meditation techniques have been surprisingly effective. Stress reduction is important for everyone, but especially for people in leadership positions. The decisions you make affect thousands of people. You need to be operating at peak mental and physical condition. Zeiler considered this. Dr. Vance, may I ask you something? Of course. Did you plan this? Kalen paused in his work. Plan what? This. The medical intervention, the diplomatic resolution. Did you deliberately use healthcare as a form of conflict resolution? Admiral, I saw a person in pain and I offered to help. Everything else just sort of happened. That is what I was afraid you would say. Years later, the story of Dr. Kalen Vance and the great medical intervention became legend throughout the galaxy. Military academies began teaching Vance protocols. Medical schools added courses in preventive diplomacy, and the phrase aggressive healthcare entered common usage as a term for conflict resolution through wellness. Kalen himself remained at Field Hospital Gamma 9, treating patients and training students, still genuinely baffled by the fuss everyone made about basic medical care. The hospital had expanded into a full medical complex, complete with research facilities and a diplomatic annex where species could resolve conflicts through comprehensive health assessments. You know, Rixel said one day as they watched a group of former enemies sharing meditation techniques in a hospital garden, "I think you actually did it." Did what? Kalen asked, checking his ever-present medkit. Changed the galaxy. Made it a healthier place. Kalen shrugged. People still get sick. They still get hurt. They still need help. But now they're more likely to ask for that help instead of shooting at each other first. I suppose that's progress. You suppose? Rixel laughed. Kalen, there hasn't been a major war in 3 years. The Galactic Health Initiative has prevented 17 conflicts through medical intervention. Half the galaxy's military officers are now certified in basic first aid because they're afraid of looking incompetent next to a human medic. Kalen made a note on his data pad about ordering more antiseptic. That's nice. Do we have enough supplies for tomorrow's clinic? Rixel shook her head, still smiling. Never change, document. Never change. As the twin suns set over Field Hospital Gamma 9, now officially designated as the Galactic Center for Medical Diplomacy, Kalen Vance finished his rounds, updated his inventory logs, and prepared for another day of doing what he'd always done, helping people who needed help. The fact that this simple approach had somehow revolutionized interstellar relations was, as he'd always maintained, just a happy side effect. Because at the end of the day, that's what medics do. They help people no matter who they are, where they come from, or which side of the conflict they're on. And sometimes, just sometimes, that's enough to change the galaxy. The end.